This slide does not
Okay.
want to keep the background image. Yeah, what?
Oh, that's so weird.
Okay, well, I will fix that really quick while everyone's watching. I just need to insert image.
All right, we are live on YouTube. Let me hit record quickly.
Get this image actually.
Then I will admit everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are just managing some slideshow uh,
There we go. Well, it's a little long,
difficulties. There we go. We figured it out.
but at least it has an image now since the background was not showing. Little
That
close.
is That is perfect. Welcome everyone. Happy, what is today? Goodness, Saturday for me, depending on where you are. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to this wonderful Academy session that will be hosted by our very, very own Katarina Rossi. Katarina, I will hand it promptly over to you.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Designing a Effective Personal Curriculum. Um, I am going to just start us off here. Let me make sure I've got everyone visible. Awesome. So let's get going. Who am I? Why me? Why are we here? Why are you listening to me? Well, I'm Katarina. I am a software engineer and I'm currently based kind of half and half between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, California. So this is the morning for me. And I actually specifically joined Accepted Society in 2024, specifically because I wanted to carve out time to work on my personal curriculums. That was my main focus and goal. Now, have I gotten there? Not entirely, and partially because working on personal curriculums, researching resources for them, coming up with different ideas, learning about learning, this is just a hobby for me, something I enjoy doing for fun. So when I saw that people were interested in this really stoked my interest. I'm a lifelong learner with way too many interests and passions. And I also recently, let's cover in the next slide. Well, actually, no, I guess it's in the slide after. Never mind. My slides are a little all over the place, but we will figure this out. Um, I let's, you know what? I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna take a step back and talk about these way too many interests and passions and the curriculum design. So a little more about when I say I really like this, I'm legitimately not kidding. I was a double major, triple minor in college, and the course catalog for my college was basically my Hogwarts of history. I read that thing probably cover to cover, except for the engineering school, which is ironic because I'm now a self-taught and bootcamp taught professional software engineer. So I really, really like to learn that. And I don't know about you, but what I've found is that if you know where to look, there are tons of resources. There's lots of really good resources available from full curriculum guides to online courses, MOOCs, recorded lectures, homework assignments, if you know where to look, course reading lists, textbooks, you name it. The hard part is often not so much finding that information, but figuring out which one should you use? How do you put it together? What do you choose to study? Which resource to go with? Which one to skip? Is it even good or not? That's where I always struggled, and I always wanted to do basically all of them. So that is where the framework that we're going to cover today really shines. Since there's no shortage of resources, we're going to focus in on this framework that I learned from Rebecca Scales Instructor Academy at Procore. So this is the part I was tripping myself up with trying to get to before. But since I'd been playing around with learning and taught myself to code, I had been teaching people how to code that were non-engineers just for fun inside of my work and, playing around with my side hobby of learning. And one of those learning areas that I like to really learn about is learning and teaching. So I was connected with our director of capabilities development, Rebecca Scales, who's a really awesome person, instructor. She used to be a teacher who then went into the corporate world and figured out that the corporate world has a lot of places where we need to learn and we need to teach, and people don't know how. If you weren't in education, you weren't taught how to do that. So she built courses there to teach teachers, basically. I took that course and combined that with the education that I'd done on my own to build a course that helped more than 900 engineers learn Ruby on Rails and get onboarded onto our gigantic code base at the same time. And recently did a conference talk on how I did that course and that framework in Amsterdam, and I think it was early September. So today, what we're going to be doing is going through how I adapted that method that I learned from Rebecca for personal curriculums. So the key of this, it's a backwards design process. So instead of starting with topics or content, we start with identifying what you want, then work through how to break that down step by step into a plan that incorporates these learning science principles, avoids common pitfalls, and respects your real life and how you actually function. And I know some of you might be education professionals and you might know more than me. So if I'm saying anything wrong or you have other ideas, clarifications, whatever, please throw that in the chat. I'd love to hear that. Um, and yeah, this is 100% from my assortment of various things. So if you've done backwards design before, if you've looked into this, you know that the first step is generally to think about what results you want. What do you want to be able to do to be able to have done at the end of this process? What I want us to start with first is actually, since this is a personal curriculum, take a step back from that and just think about what do you want? Not as results, just generally. Maybe your goal might be to just play with some topics. Maybe you've always wanted to watch some lectures and you don't even know why, or it just sounds fun. This is a personal curriculum. Fun is a perfectly valid outcome. So I want you to get kind of all of that down. Now, overall, for all of this, these processes, these sort of things, you could take hours on each step. So we're just going to try to do a little bit and see when we get going. So the first activity we're going to do, we're going to start right now. And I just realized, okay, I have a watch. I was like, oh no, I don't have a timer. Um, we are going to start with brain dumping around what you want. I have some prompts here for you to consider. What do you want? What are you interested in? Oops. Oh no. Okay, good. We're safe. I didn't lose it. If you feel stuck or this framing doesn't resonate with you and you already have materials that you're intending to go through or a work in progress curriculum plan, you can go ahead and start with kind of listing all of that. Um, if you can think of why and maybe answer the questions off of those pieces that you've gathered and be like, this looks interesting to me because of this, whatever. If you don't, it's perfect. Literally write anything down. Sounds fun is a perfectly valid reason. So, yeah, I think I had some additional examples of like, say it's you actually wanted to go back to get a degree, you need certain things, anything. So I'm going to give, I think, a 5-minute timer for everyone to start brain dumping. I might suggest starting a spreadsheet. If spreadsheet might be weird to type this part in, but we will be working probably with a sheet for the rest of the class. So yes, oh, I see there's a timer. Okay, so I will shut up and give people time. So as you go through, if you've finished up at all, if you'd like to share in the chat any sort of little bits and pieces you might be able to share, that'd be great. Um, if you would like to share that, that's awesome. I can start with a couple of mine, if I can find this here. It's under amorphous blob. Um, so some of you have heard this before. The area that I want to end up doing a lot of research in, I have a really hard time describing, and I've been calling it the amorphous blob. So one of my main goals is to figure out how I can actually like describe the amorphous blob. So some of the things that I wrote down when I did this brain dump is I want to clarify what my amorphous blob entails by connecting concepts in the blob to words and definitions, research areas, disciplines, etc., that already exist outside of my brain and existing scholarship, vernacular, etc. I know that the things are things, but I don't know words for them. Um, I want to be able to explain to other people what I am researching, what my focus area entails in a somewhat concise, coherent manner that does not require flailing my arms around, as I like to do, um, for my words to be comprehensible in context. Um, Having realized it probably falls under cognitive science, and that was the sort of major I was unintentionally aiming for with my double major, triple minor. I want to know what the fundamental knowledge, skills, abilities a cognitive science bachelor's is intended to provide. What would a rubric look like or a skills framework? We'll talk about those later. What are the learning objectives? What should they be? I want to be able to evaluate what I still need to know, need to refresh, and what I want to learn and develop net new, etc. Um, I also have another area um, which is math. I want to be able to do further math building on to as far as I got, which was about calculus. But I found that my gap where I really have a problem is that I have a lot of anxiety about basic math. I have like a hole in understanding in from basically like second grade math. And so I am playing with math. This is one that I'm not doing as seriously. Like I'm not trying to like strictly do, but I want to continue to do different activities to build sort of conceptual understanding, really go depth over speed. So done a bunch of fun research there. Does anyone want to shout out any? I can read some that are in the chat. Oh, I see another cognitive science. That's really exciting. That I think that's really interesting. It has a lot of fingers in other fields. That's true. Shia, I love all of those. That is a lot of them. Um, Focusing on ancient Greece. Reconnect with your love of literature. Ooh, that's a good one. And to also regain skills of analysis and literary criticism. I want to have fun exploring language and literature. Yes, yes, I love all of this. Oh, yes, a lot of relearn what I've forgotten. So I want to, this is something that I have written to cover later, but I actually want to throw this out here now because this I think is really important for people to know. So this is something that I learned in my psychology undergraduate degree in learning and like memory psych. But when you relearn something, you actually learn it faster than the original time. You don't ever truly lose all of the connections. Basically, your brain just prunes and makes it less easy for you to access that memory. So when you're coming back to something, I know that's something for me. I can feel like, oh, dang, I used to know all this and I don't know it anymore. Remembering that I'm actually going to relearn it faster. And any of that learning efforts that you do, it's not wasted, even if you have to take a break, step away, or any of that. Awesome. I love all of these. Okay, I have to go on, lest we spend the whole time here. But let's talk about what we're going to be doing for the rest of this process. So, at a high level, how this process starts is by analyzing your wants and separating out the ones that are skills and capabilities from the sort of things that are tasks you want to complete or accomplishments, achievements, things that are kind of a one and done or what you might see as a typical goal for some things that tend to be measurable. And we want to align the intent of the goal to your underlying motivation. After identifying these intended results, we're going to select, or in this because we don't have enough time. We're probably going to work with one of each. But what you'll want to do is select a subset of those to focus on and rewrite them as what I've dubbed learning performance or fun objectives. Um, we're then going to take each objective and work backwards to figure out what sort of topics to cover, what resources to find. You start with questions like, what concepts does this objective rely on? Figuring out those dependencies, what you might need to learn first. What information do I need to learn? What resources cover that information? You then also break them down to figure out what sort of activities you can do, how you can evaluate your learning. Um, Asking questions like, how can I actively practice this? What actions does this consist of? What can I do once I've built this skill to demonstrate that I've really learned it? How can I validate how well I'm doing if I'm going in the right direction? For some of these, you're going to want to think of it as ways of like, how can I ensure that this is actually still fun for me? This is still matching whatever that objective is. Because in this case, we want to make sure that it is um, doing what you want to do. So I'm trying to remember if, nope. Um, so rest of the workshop, we're going to be going through these. We have the first step of your wants to your intended results. Um, your intended results then to objectives, and then the objectives to filling out the curriculum. Um, and also talking about how you might structure that curriculum, different sort of creative ways, and discuss ideas and methods around staying on track and accountability. Um, the plan is that we'll have time for an activity in each of these main sections where you can give it a try. I would love to hear in the chat whether you would prefer to bias our time together towards these activity blocks to make sure that you have enough time to really dig in there, or making sure we get through all of the content. If you'd prefer to really take your time during the activities, that's totally cool, and we can potentially postpone later segments to a follow-up session. Um, Let me know. So that will kind of dictate whether I try to cut myself off because there's a lot and it is already 10:23. Okay, I'm seeing some cover all the content. Okay, we're gonna speed. All right, so next piece. Thinking about that intent, what do you really want to do? Something here that I think is really important to think about is when you're learning. Oftentimes, you've probably heard of the concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. We really want to have a growth mindset when we're doing sort of learning tasks. In order to have that growth mindset and have that actually work, uh, if you are in a situation where you need to learn, but what you're being evaluated on, where all the pressure is how you're performing, what the actual like objective, yes or no, did I get it right? Did I do it this fast? That is going to sort of give you a conflict in there. Um, so when you are actually wanting to learn, if you're actually in learning mode, you want time to be able to make mistakes. You want to focus on activities. You need sort of safety in that. And you want to focus your results, what we're going to be working on in that area, versus something like, say, when I would take a class, um, I would get frustrated when we'd have, for example, in high school, right? We'd have experiments, and I couldn't control whether or not I would exactly get what they needed. It was supposed to be fun and for learning. It wouldn't be fun for me because my mind was like, I need to achieve this. My number one thing here is I need to get this correct. If that's what one of your personal curriculum goals are for, you're going to want to like tweak this process a little bit because I'm focusing mostly, like this whole process, mostly on the other areas, trying to figure out how we can actually make sure you really learn it, not get it done, and sort of vice versa. Um, so yes, I mentioned this. I think this is kind of a problem with traditional goal setting, where oftentimes we're encouraged to make performance-focused goals because they're more easily trackable or metricable. But if you want to be doing learning, you want time to focus on growth. Mistakes are good, time is necessary, and speed can be sort of difficult. So I have a link here. I will probably share these slides later, and ideally, I did not finish it. I wanted to give you guys a spreadsheet you can fill in with this process that links to this TED Talk about learning mode versus performance mode. So in what you worked on, what you wrote, your brain dump, I want you to start with looking at that and sort of analyzing it and figuring out, okay, there's two types of things that we might be working on here. We might be having a capability or a skill. This is aligned towards learning mode. Um, or you might have an achievement and accomplishment. Um, if your goal is incentivized performance, but you're trying to learn, that won't work. If you frame your why around learning, but you only care about performing, that's going to clash. You're not going to care. So, since these will be guideposts for the rest of the entire process, we need to align them. So that is what the next activity is. I'm going to keep it 5 minutes and try to keep myself speedy so that we can make sure we get through this. Um, but let's see how far you can get in five minutes. But break out what you have into your skills, capabilities, something that's like an action ongoing, that sort of thing, or something that's like completed class, read a book, um, or for example, if you have classes that you already want to do, this is where you can start taking that, like, what is there in that I want out of it, and sort of reframe that into, if it's about learning mode, into something that you can make it as more capability or skill. So here's some examples here. If you have completed class and really you want to complete that class because you want to be able to do these skills, rewrite it that way. You want to read a classic book because you don't understand why it's a classic, um, reframe it into understand. Yeah, so 5 minutes. Timer. And while we're going, I will share some, if I have additional examples in the chat. Alrighty. How is everyone feeling? You need these last few minutes? You want to keep going? Give me a thumbs up if you would like to keep going, since we've got a lot of content. I'm seeing lots of thumbs. Okay. Um, so going to read out what I put in the chat. So some ideas for some sort of fun framed ones, uh, where because it sounds fun and I'm interested in whatever, you can turn that into something like able to describe or explain why I think this is fun, um, or an activity of having like doing the thing and having fun, just strange sort of activities here. Some of the other ones that are in here, I'm like chill and have low pressure fun with whatever. So that if that's a fun one where you just want to have low pressure fun with it, that's an activity, that's something ongoing that you can keep working on. You can sort of use to evaluate. Um, and then Shaya had some very awesome stuff in here where she talked about how math and biology is because she wants to become an herbalist and needs those skills for that end goal. And she has it broken down in much finer detail there. But I love that example because it's taking, it's like, okay, I know I want to become an herbalist. All right, I know I need to learn the skills. And then you can go through and try to figure out, like maybe one of your first objectives, this can be kind of meta, and what I'm having to do is actually doing the first work of figuring out what your next objectives actually need to be. So one of the things that Rebecca really focused on in her class and that I did at work was using this concept of a skills framework. So, a skills framework is this structured system of skills which are organized by proficiency levels. So, you have your basically beginning all the way through advanced, and you have it listed out. So, sort of what it looks like to be at each level for a job, a skills framework will have for a specific like skill area, basically everything that someone would be able to do, what it looks like to actually be really good at that skill. Um, for personal curriculums, if you want to go through and like spend the time to try to find one of these skills frameworks, build one up, that's super great. It might be a bit overkill. You can also just sort of think about proficiency levels. One of the really useful things for skills frameworks is you can use it as a starting point for like a rubric or a sort of personal assessment guide. We talk about that later on and how you can sort of validate stuff. And you can use that to identify where are you currently. Um, because when you're building these skills, there's only like so much you can jump in a certain amount of time, right? So if you want to be advanced, like I would love to be advanced at math. I am not there yet. So taking like that skill of is all these capabilities, what are the underlying dependencies of that? What do I need to be able to do? What I need to know how? Next step, next step, and then be able to identify what's just the very next step for you and focus in on really fleshing that part out. Obviously, this can be hard. So this is an example of a skills framework. This is the one that because I ran out of time, we're using the one that I did for my course, some pieces of that from Rails. So you can see in the proficient, um, when you're in proficient, you obviously can do all of the things that are in beginner and approaching. So if you're just a beginner, Rails, I want you to be able to be familiar with what the Rails MVC pattern is. Never done Rails before, don't know what it is, just need to, kind of get a gist of what it is. Be able to recognize and make use of some of these basic conventions. You're familiar with some of the folder structures, you're familiar with RSpec, you're starting to get, a grasp of some of these concepts. Approaching is showing that you're getting closer and closer, and proficient is what in a job or the way that I'm thinking of it as like I'm like, okay, what would proficient look like if I had gotten a bachelor's in this other topic? Like, okay, that would be my proficient, and sort of backing it up. Um, and one of the things that's really useful for um, thinking about these. So I see a comment in here. I'm clear on what knowledge and skill I want to build. That's awesome. We're going to be using that to literally make your personal curriculum aimed directly at matching that skill. Um, so that's what we're going to be doing with the rest of this process. So Bloom's taxonomy, this is a really useful framework for thinking about human learning as a hierarchy of cognitive skills that build on each other. For example, it's really difficult to understand something that you can't remember. And likewise, it's very difficult to apply knowledge that you don't really understand. So this is useful for identifying dependencies, like I was talking about earlier, um, where basically if your objectives are higher up in this hierarchy, you'll need to have reached already or reach each of these lower levels. And this can, of course, be a bit fractal. You might, in order to like be able to apply one concept, you have to understand a sub-concept, right? And that sub-concept you're going to need to know about, be able to apply, and so forth. I think this generated funky on this slide. It looks a little weird. I was like, oh, look, it did it pretty. But yes, so it's like knowledge, comprehension. Yeah, it looks like it's missing. I think it's missing a level, um, which I may or may not have around easily. Let's do a quick search. Bloom's taxonomy. I like the original version image. But yes, here we go, this one. So you've got, oh, hello. Oh, we're in study.com. That's hilarious. If you're interested in, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but sort of accelerating how you could possibly like, if you need to, this is more of a achievement sort of thing, but you need to check the box of a degree. I actually went down a whole rabbit hole of that, so reach out to me. So anyways, sorry, distraction. So we've got this knowledge and remembering at the bottom, this first layer. Then you've got comprehension, understanding, application. So for each of these, there's these Bloom's verbs that you can use. So let's go Bloom's cheat sheet. Verbs cheat sheet. I wish I had these on hand somewhere because I had a better link. I will probably find it somewhere, but let's just look at one of these quickly. Oh, wow, that is not, no, no. This is automatically using, dang, that's not good. Bloom's verbs cheat sheet. Did I click on the same one again? That's something terrible. All right, here we go. Here's some of these. So what does it look like to remember something? You can find, you can identify, you can label, you can list, versus when you start getting up into understanding. This is when you're explaining. This is basically going from the lower level of sort of having familiarity to actually like having that concept in your brain, linked to other things, making like really sense in your brain. Wow. The words aren't wording. I'm sorry for the 10:40 a.m. brain. I should have scripted more of this. Um, but what's really useful about this is that um, I think I should have put this section earlier, but talking about some learning science stuff here, a lot of times people uh, think that they're using more effective strategies than they actually are. So let me see if I can scoot a set here. A set, yeah, a set. That's a side and a head. So then we'll hop back to that, kind of explain why we want to really break down these concepts rather than just, and starting with these skills rather than just kind of jumping to going through specific ones and aligning them, right? So we already mentioned that making mistakes is important. I may have even mentioned that struggling with a challenge is really good for your brain. Ideally, what you want to have is a level of desirable difficulty where it's not so hard that you're drowning, but it's really challenging enough to give your brain a workout. Another misconception that you might not know is that people often think that if something feels easier, that means that they learned better if you had like a smooth learning experience. And that if it feels more difficult, then you aren't learning as well. This misperception that low effort is equivalent to successful learning and vice versa is called the fluency effect and is partly why lectures are so popular when they're not actually as effective as doing activities and other sort of active practice methods. Retrieval practice is a really big, important one. So people will often skip activities and rely on passive learning methods like reading or watching videos, which feel a lot more effective than they actually are. In coding, for example, you might read through a tutorial and you'll look through it and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, I totally understand this." And it's like, "Yeah, this seems easy. I can totally do this when I come back to it." Um, but that's actually giving you a sort of false sense of familiarity. It might feel more time efficient, but just because you recognize something, so that if you look back on Bloom's, that's the knowledge level. Just because you recognize something doesn't mean you actually understand it. Doesn't mean you'll be able to recall it and actually use that information when you need it. So basically, what you are doing when you're doing these activities is you're encoding this information. You're helping your brain build connections, which will then when you practice retrieving that, it's building those connections so you can grab it and actually use it versus just having it sort of in your brain somewhere, but not in a sort of accessible format. So you've probably heard that taking notes by hand is better than taking digital notes by typing. You might not have considered why that is. It's not probably the only reason, but a big reason is that when you are typing, you're much more likely to copy down what someone's saying verbatim versus taking that mental effort to rephrase that in your own words or just in a different way. That process of actively working with it in order to shorten it enough to write it with your hand is giving you some active practice. Um, I thought that that one was an interesting one. Flashcards are also a way people attempt active practice. Um, I also, this one, when I learned this, it suddenly made sense why my favorite method where I felt like I really learned the best in school, what I would do is I would build these, I basically write out everything that I needed to know, like as a study guide in my own words, like pick out what I thought was the most important, everything I needed to know right before the test. And then I would like close my eyes and I would quiz myself on what was on there. And I was like, wow, I always feel like, I'm cramming before the test, but like this really works versus all the stuff that I was like trying to do beforehand. It was because I had happened upon an active learning method with retrieval practice, um, like sort of incidentally. So that's something that you want to include when you're building your own activities. I also used to, for example, in MOOCs, I would skip the response questions. I'd be really annoyed with all the ones that seemed like busy work to like prove that you read it. Like, tell me about this. I'm like, why do I need to do that? I obviously did the reading. Um, and now I'm like, oh, this is actually for me. So I'll make myself answer those stupid questions and be like, okay, I'm actually practicing. Like, no one needs to read this. Like, this isn't actually busy work. So sorry to all the teachers who are like grumpily stared at. Yeah. So, what we're gonna do now, I'm looking at the clock and we still have 44 minutes. So I think we're good to have a couple of minutes to go through this. I'm going to see if I can't find the better Bloom's verbs cheat sheet. Um, but pick one of your intended results and try to map it to a Bloom's level. Is this, I need the better chart. Is it something where you're going to be applying it? Or are you going to be analyzing it? And then from there, like, if you feel confident that you already know this one, at that level, uh, maybe pick another one, but also like kind of go through, if not like break it down. What would it look like? What would you be able to do for each of those previous steps? Um, because when you're doing those previous steps, phrasing these concepts in this way, that's giving you an actual practice method. This is kind of automatically going, oh, hey, if I can explain this. Oh, that's the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention here. So with backwards design, part of the idea of these, what are your objectives? Your objectives are your, what was there's a specific phrase for it. It is in, I will send this document here, acceptable evidence. So I like to think of it in this way of like, what could I do to prove that I'm capable of this task? What would being capable of this task look like as an action? And then you can turn that into something you practice with. So even if I can't, for example, now comfortably do timed multiplication, which I actually ironically might be able to now, not from practicing that, but practicing the concepts. But say I'm not there yet. If I'm able to practice at it and feel a little less anxious by doing it, I'm doing active practice, I'm working at it. It's something that you can keep doing. One of the things with, personal curriculums, this is a lot of times in our free time, right? So if it's something that you can keep working at, if you have to drop it, come back later, it makes for me a lot less stress to know that I'm like able to keep working at this regardless of whether or not, it's like, oh, I can absolutely do this every day for a set amount of times. Um, so yeah. Uh, And if you guys have any that you would like to share in the chat, renaming, I don't think we'll do a timer this time. I'll just give you some time to work on it. Ooh, awesome. And maybe share some with me of how you might have reworded some of these. One more thought. If you haven't thought of this sort of process before and you have a like syllabus, a course that you've gathered that you're interested in taking, try to decompile it. Try to go, okay, why are they like what is this level? What is this skill? Like try to get the skill out from the activities in there. You could do that now or later. And when you're feeling good, I'd love to start seeing some thumbs up just to know time-wise whether y'all are sitting waiting for me and I'm waiting for you. So seeing thumbs. All right. One more thing to kind of consider here. I realized I put this on the slide and forgot to mention it. Um, is some of these verbs are easier to sort of measure than others. I put measure in quotes because obviously it's very important to me. I am very, you could probably gather this, very perfectionistic. If I make stuff too strict for myself, I'm going to trigger myself into performance mode and not learning mode. But it's much easier. Like you're like, okay, how do I know if I am understanding calculus? But if you've got, okay, I'm able to solve calculus problems, including derivatives, and perhaps my sort of example would be here. I would probably include things like um, feel comfortable and sort of describe the sort of things that I want to see for myself to know that, like, yes, I've achieved this goal, and then you can use those to practice. So, I believe for understanding this, I think I had like take calculus class in a previous example of this or something for that. But another one would be like instead of understand, because understand is kind of a vague verb, something like summarize. Or for when you're going like um, to that sort of comprehension level, I really like explain or to diagram something out. I saw in the chat people talking about explaining things to other people. Um, but yeah, Those are some of my favorites. Okay, so we talked about this. We talked about desirable difficulty, active practice, the fluency effect. Um, let's talk a little bit about where to find content and activities. So what we're going to be doing with these objectives that you've been working on next is thinking about what content you need, what topics do you need to cover, and what activities are you going to do for them. Um, some places that you can look for these, there are a lot of full curriculum like plans online, especially in the math, computer science, and physics area. So if you're interested in any of those, you can, and you haven't found them, let me know. I can send over multiple full paths of like how to learn all the way through math. There's like on GitHub multiple like full computer science paths. Um, I also have spent many hours playing with looking at different astrophysics and physics and math and CS syllabi, comparing them. So yeah, I've got lots of stuff there. Um, Obviously, OpenCourseWare, MOOCs, textbooks, recorded lectures. Stuff is on YouTube. There's also, I said archive there. I can't remember. It's somewhere in archive.org. But there used to be things like the Apple, like what was that app called? Now I've suddenly forgotten what it's called. But there used to be Apple courses that no longer works. You can find a lot of those stored in the like archive.org area. There's also Stanford Lagunitas courses are still sort of backed up there. Um, Library reading lists can be really useful. You can find, if you're sneaky, you can find the course reading lists for various specific courses, or for example, some courses, some like programs will give you a full like reading list for a like degree. Those are more like suggested reading ones usually. You can find old syllabi on the internet. You can find homework assignments. If you snoop, yes, iTunes U, yes. Um, there's also, of course, university course catalogs, and what you can do there is you can use the same process if there's something that sounds really interesting. I used to be like, oh, I really wish I could take that class. I wish I knew what was in it. I can be like, okay, well, what is it that I really wish that I could actually learn from this? Or if you're able to find their learning objectives, you can use those as gold to be like, okay, they're saying what it means, like what I'm trying to teach in this course is this, assuming, they actually uh, built it in backwards design. Obviously, sometimes learning objectives can feel like they're kind of like vague or sort of an afterthought, but find good ones. You can use it to build a course off of uh, various content places. Oh, wait, I wanted to say one more for sort of for something like art or other things you have to be a bit more creative. Um, there are some art resources online. There's also various like a lot more of the not so you know how like Skillshare has like smaller courses. There's a lot of like individual providers that have full on so there's like atelier schools for art. There's New Masters Academy. You can find a lot of stuff like that that's not directly associated with necessarily a school. You can also be creative and like watch a bunch of YouTube videos and track what all their assignments are when they talk about them in their vlogs. Um, yeah, so lots of creative ideas here. Um, then some consideration for activities that you want to think about. How do you like to learn? Do you like video lectures? Do you like reading? Do you like podcasts? I personally prefer the like full-on lecture videos to the like little ones in the MOOCs. I don't know why. There's just something about my brain that like finds the little ones like irritating. And the full lecture ones, I can like pretend like I'm in their actual lecture, and that like gets the dopamine flowing. But you might, or I like to, read. So consider those. Try to make connections to other interests or tie in other learning. See if like you want to use this for a specific field. Can you connect it, or for a specific reason? Can you connect it to that earlier on? Can you apply those concepts directly to what you want to do? So the example for um, my Ruby and Rails course was that when I'm trying to get people to learn Rails, these are new engineers, or they're just someone who hasn't used Rails before, right? Like they really want to get delivering stuff right away. They're not so interested in like building a to-do app. Like I don't care about a to-do app, but they do care about learning the actual stuff that they're going to be working on, those concepts. So what I made the activities for them is directly tied to what they're going to be doing. So I'm using the actual app that they'll be learning, the actual very complicated giant core app. I'm turning that into like what are the core concepts, what are the most important parts of that, and making like a tutorial that teaches them exactly what those things are so they can practice learning Rails in a tutorialized format that's easier, that gives them that desirable difficulty versus drowning them, but is also very close to and going to be useful for what they're actually doing. So that's called situated learning. If you have the learning is close to the thing you're actually going to be doing, that improves um, learning outcomes. I don't know. That sounds weird. Some other thoughts, for example, for my math, I wanted to see if I could. I'm like, okay, first, when I want to learn some specific topic, a lot of this I'm really interested in knowing the math for astrophysics. So can I like be like, what's the basic version of this and like frame it in astrophysics rather than the boring sort of word examples that they give that doesn't, sound interesting to you? Um, Also, some other considerations, energy levels, flexibility. Like, can you have options for like low energy you, medium energy you, high energy you? Um, for me, uh, I don't have a lot of day of brain right now. My brain fog has been really bad, so probably partially why the words are not wording so great. So a lot of the times my like expectations like they would work great. I'm like, oh yes, I want to work on that, but it only works for higher energy me. So thinking about how can you make this as easy as possible for you to start. There's a coding phrase that I like to use. I really love this one. It's from I think Kent Beck, but it's make the change easy, then morning this may be hard, then make the easy change. Make the change easy, then make the easy change. Making the change easy might be hard, but once you've done that, you have it a lot easier for yourself. Another concept that you might want to think about is from Montessori learning. I did sort of a dive into that for learning about, trying to improve my math concepts. And this concept of self-checkability of where they want it to be like this activity where they'll get immediate feedback on if they're doing it wrong. So can you build into your own activities something that will give you immediate feedback? Because immediate feedback is better than a longer term feedback. Some of this is easier than others. Code, you can have tests. I'm trying to think of some other good examples. If anyone has any ideas or examples for any of these, please share it in the chat. Love to hear about some of these. Um, but yes, my brain is not giving me any other great examples of that because code is not a great one. But it's an interesting concept. Okay. So this is the main activity. Um, it sounds like a lot of people, unsurprisingly, do not want to do activities. I want you to do activities and I want you to build the learning. I want you to actively practice my framework. No. So what I'm going to suggest is perhaps if anyone is willing to be a volunteer and give me one of these and work through this together. Otherwise, we can use one of mine. But perhaps let's do this together, or would you guys like time? Have I convinced you that you'd like time to practice working on breaking down some of these objectives into um, prerequisites? I hear it like some time. Awesome. Okay. All right. So this is these spreadsheet I was going to make into a example. So just letting you guys know if you might want to try this sort of structure. So this was the first one where you basically take your learning outcome, you like take your initial result, what you want, the skill, turn it into a learning outcome. The next step was take that objective and be like, okay, what are the content topics? What I would do, why I pulled this up, is I found when I was working on a lot of these that what it meant to be able to recognize and identify Rails conventions in use, for example, meant a whole bunch of other sub sort of objectives. I was like, well, that means this is yeah, okay, this was controllers and route files. I'm like, this is a weird one. So yeah, so what are some Rails conventions? Strong params. They can identify strong params and they can articulate what the purpose is if they can do this. They can do this, they will be able to build a strong params method. Um, and so the framing here is like, what is it that you want to be able to do? Phrase it as you're going to do it. Phrase it as the activity. Like they'll be able to build a strong params method, so they're going to practice building strong params method. Um, they should be able to explain, so they will explain and they will describe. They'll practice describing, practice explaining. Um, so in order to be able to identify strong params, you need to know what strong params are, that sort of content. Um, and then these are slightly different, but I'd say here, like, what sort of activities might you have for this? This would be one where I would, I believe in this one, I'd have people pull up some different controllers and show up, like I did a lot of this together and practice identifying what the different pieces are. I'd be like, what strong params? And have them practice explaining it to me. All right. Um, let's do, I'm going to say a 5-minute timer, and then if that is good at the end, you guys can give me thumbs. Or if you want even more time, we can have even more time. Okay. How is everybody feeling? You want to spend any more time on one of them? Want to do an example together, perhaps? Ooh, we might need a vote. I see thumbs for, I believe that's moving on. Would we like, um, give me a heart if you want more time? And if you would like to, I think it would be fun if I can get anyone to volunteer, to try perhaps breaking one of these down. Or we can do an example from my Rails stuff, perhaps, if you would like. Break one down together. Or we could just do one of mine. What do you think? Anything in the chat? If not, I am happy to do anything. Ooh, I see a hand. Ooh, yay. Awesome. Ooh, I love some of these in the chat. Okay, Natasha, I think you were first. Do you want to go? Let me know what is maybe share it in the chat and we can maybe play with one of these, talk about what's in here, fix this as we go together. Are you able to come off mute? Uh, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Rajai? Raja? Raja? Would you like to go?
Hi.
No,
I'm a little nervous. Okay, so I have
we're all
this.
here.
So uh, I am I study social sciences.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, and international relations, and I have this blob, amorphous of
Marcus Bob, yay!
yes. So the basis of the study of international relations is a lot of theoretical text, philosophical text, and I would love to go over these theories. To like I did them in my graduate studies, and it's been a long time ago, so I want to go back and study those. And I think it would be I would love to understand the arguments and what
Yes, okay.
each one says, and each one uh, maybe at some later stage compare them to each other, be able to do that. That's how we will know, okay, I understood what this scholar says and what this other scholar criticizes about it and all that. um the skill part would be being able to write about this and finish writing my research proposal and pursue doctoral studies. So writing is a big part of what I want to design this curriculum for, to practice writing. That's the skill. Okay.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so we've got practice writing. I'm just putting words down here. Okay, so were you able to? Okay, so we've got understand. So let's start with this one, and I'm just going to kind of go through from off the top of my head, um, with kind of a bit of like both of these, right? So the first thing you said, you have understand
Hmm.
for this set of philosophical steps is not the right word. I must
The
have just
classics, the theories.
classics.
Yeah.
Classic. Okay. So the first thing that I think of, you probably know what they are. I do not. I would like to know.
Hmm.
So uh, I'm going to use learners just because it's on here, but I will, learner will. Uh, I want to, I will list the, I will be able to list, I'll just say, I will list what the the classic philosophical classics.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, do you mean now or
No, this is just like that's a prerequisite. You need to be able to list what those
right?
philosophical classics are. I can't do that. So that's an example of like where I start. And then maybe sort of a level up is what you're saying is like, okay, you want to read them. So not sure like content topics here is probably up, but like for the next one of understanding that set of the arguments, let's see if we can't make this a more actionable verb. So let's maybe say summarize because you want to be writing. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so let's look. Where is summarize on Bloom's level? I'm wondering if is that comprehension? Um, or is that understanding? I'm not entirely sure, but we're definitely going to start getting into understanding when we're doing when we're practicing analysis, right? Okay. So I would say, I wonder if I can throw in the both of them together here, but with the sort of concept of like, okay, where are you sort of Bloom's level? I think this one would be like your knowledge. Can I insert onto the right?
Yes, I think the first levels, know and understand
I think would
and
be comprehension. Yeah.
comprehension. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then you're talking about comparing them against each other. I think this one is analysis.
Probably at the analysis level and
Yeah. So
synthesis.
when you're so this is kind of what I was talking about. It's a bit fractal. Um, if you're practicing analysis, you might not, be skilled at it. You might not like be able to like say that you're there that yet, but practicing it helps you comprehend. It helps you like you can use those sort of activities at that level. So you're practicing, you're building up. So you may not be able to like
Mhm.
compare it against each other at your level of feeling like you've proved that you know that you have that analysis level, but you're still practicing. It still gives you ideas for activities. That's like where you want to build up to. So we'll say analysis. So what do you need to be able to know what these are? So content topics, um,
I,
what
I think you I think you said it best at first. It's not the lack of resources. I I have the books, I have the PDFs, I have um, lots of content. I'm not lacking that.
yeah.
It's the structure for me, the what to do every day. Do I
Yeah.
read on some days and write on other days? This
Yep.
is this is the part I'm
Yep. So you probably already have these for just since we're talking this through and like also this is kind of useful for me because cognitive science has philosophy and I don't know philosophy.
Mhm.
Um, uh, step here from this, I'd be like, okay, I don't know how to fill in this content topics. I don't know, like, I don't know what they are. I don't know what they are to list them. So I want to like find them. I want to know like why they're the classics. So I start listing like sort of more like why are these the classics? Just kind of
Mhm.
like, and this format will move around because I'm just thinking out loud here. Why are these the classics? So I need content on that. I'm gonna need content on what are they? Like,
Okay.
is there a list?
Oh
You might,
yes. Okay.
yeah,
Let's say first basic level realism, um, Marxism, let's say
nice.
liberalism. Um,
Yes. Okay, awesome. So you've got some so realism,
yes,
Marxism.
Marxism. Yep.
I wish this would let me go through. So,
Constructivism. Yeah. There's a
uh,
list. Okay, I know the list.
yes, perfect. To constructive constructivism. I see that we only have 11 minutes left. Oh, this is so good. I really want to keep going on this, but I do also have some additional stuff. So let's just really quick do a couple more
Okay.
minutes. So this would be breaking this down. You're like, okay, you need to know information on what all these are. So that tells you your content. And then, so activities, listing is an activity, explaining is an activity, summarizing as an activity. So for each of them, you can go through and be like, I'm going to summarize the arguments from here and pull out what the arguments are. That becomes something that you practice, that goes something in your list. And you are going to want to do that first before you compare against each other. So then the next thought is, okay, I have this activity. I'm going to summarize what these arguments are. Did I summarize it well? What else do I need to know for this? I need to know, like, say you're you want to summarize this in a way that, like for writing and be able to compare against each other. There's like sort of analysis skills in that. What does that sort of thing look like? So those are lower level, like sort of framework skills that you'd have. And like what, especially like for comparing, like what is important to compare against each other in this realm.
Right.
So
I
that will
think
help.
doing all of that in writing would be good practice.
Yeah. So you
Doing
go
it
with all that,
writing.
and then you also think about, okay, how can I've done this myself. How can I validate that I'm actually doing this well?
Mm.
So for this sort of thing, like maybe you summarize all the arguments first, because like you want to practice them, and then maybe you go and see if you can research and you can find other people's summaries of them and see if they match up and analyze them, and so then you're going to practice your understanding to compare them. This is another part where if we manage to get to the slides, like thinking of like how can you get like outside help. Can you find an expert who's willing to like work with you on this stuff, like like the researchers program, and different ideas there. For some things, there's this concept of building a rubric, which I'm going to use this to transition into continuing down the next piece. So once you've got your activities, how do you know if you actually learn it? So it's great if you can put in some sort of self-checkability. Oftentimes, obviously, this is going to be a lot more difficult for us. We just want to like think about it. But that's when we want to start being creative of like, okay, what can we use? Can we use other activities? So for example, I have AI here with constant vigilance. What I mean with that is not just that don't let it do the work for you. That's kind of what some people classically do, but AI, it doesn't know anything. It's just a prediction of what's reasonable, right? So even if it gets super, super amazing, it's never going to be guaranteed 100% to be correct. And it's not like that's not a problem that can be fixed. That's fundamentally how it works. So you could use it and then validate it in the same way of be like, does this match with mine? Are you with it? Go find the things, validate that. That can be an activity. I wouldn't ever use that as like your only one, but that is sort of an option. Rubrics, can you find rubrics from other people? So is there a philosophy class that covers this? Can you find what homework assignments they did and figure out like how do those match up? Can you find rubrics and self-assessment? So a sample of this, I'm going to pull this up. I think it might be in the next one, but I'm just going to pull it up now because we're not entirely going with my slides. Anyways, we've got this and I believe these three. No, this is not the right one. I did the wrong thing here. So U cubed is pretty awesome if you guys are interested in math learning and reconsider. If you were scared of math as a kid at all, getting a completely different perception of math, U cubed is pretty awesome. So this is an example from this paper of a self-assessment and reflection like rubric. So as you can see, this looks really similar to the skills framework. That's why if you can kind of build that out ahead of time or find one of those, it's also useful. I assume I'm talking a lot about going both directions. You could probably also go backwards. And so the idea of this is you like figure out, kind of where you are. So this is, I have it, honestly, I wish I could read there's some of it from this teaching at its best about like how, and in that article. I will post that link about how this self-assessment and reflection can be like really good. This is also can be sort of an accountability and a thing that you do to keep yourself on track is kind of go through these. But yeah, be like, am I here? Do I meet this? Again, another sort of fractal layer of how can I prove that I know this, but like how can I prove that I did this individual piece? And then, of course, external feedback. Can you have peer or mentor feedback through, for example, the researchers program, paid critiques for art stuff. Some of you probably know about Drawbox. You can sign up for their like feedback piece. There's various levels of feedback there. There is the oh, I've forgotten the name of the site now, but it's a site where you can like sign up to get paid critiques. There's also and they have a bunch of various like art program stuff, meetups, local classes. You can get sort of peer feedback there, get a sense of if you're together. There's also sort of the concept of if you're trying to do, for example, you want to write like your goal is to write this thing in a publishable format or to be able to like do certain contest or something. You can also just try. Um, that can be one that can be motivating and also might be, you know, higher, like you might be doing better than you thought. So there's some of those out there as well. Um, so yes, this was the example feedback. So you can see here, this is a I'm failing to English, but metacognition. This is thinking about your thinking about your learning, and really like going in like, okay, how can I prove what went well? How do I know? And what does it mean to like where am I now and what's the next step? What are the next actions I can take? So trying to speed through this because we have 5 minutes. So scheduling and structure ideas. So obviously there's a traditional sort of structure that you can go with, where you're going to complete it by a certain day. I don't necessarily recommend that one unless you really like it, because I feel like with like if you're doing this as a personal curriculum, having those strict deadlines can really like push you into sort of performance mode versus learning mode. One thing I did when I went through CS50 is they had like these auto-generated like date suggestions of when to finish it by. And I'd put it on my calendar and then I just scoot it stuff out if I couldn't, and I'd do it chunk by chunk. Like, okay, I'm focusing on this chunk now. Here's this piece that's relevant to where I am. So it might be like a week in someone's traditional curriculum, but it might take me longer than a week. It doesn't matter. I'm just on that module. That's how long I'm going to get until I'm done with it and go on to the next. You can just kind of order your topics with dependencies. Some more creative options here. So like baskets, I have baskets and quotes, and I'm going to try to speed through this because I really like this concept. But what I've been wanting to set up for myself is kind of the idea of, so Montessori, they've got these different activities that are on like a shelf, and you can pull that down from a shelf, and it's something that's already set up for you to go. So this is also similar to Kanban, where we've got tickets, we've got whole assignments, things that are already prepared, ready for us, and we pick them up one by one, and then you just pick up the next when you're ready. For the baskets idea, what I'm thinking about there is like, for something like, especially maybe the art or the math, like I want to work on something that's not the main thing, just for fun. If there's a lot of work that I have to do, if it's not ready for me to be able to pick it up, I can't really get at it. So can I make myself baskets where I've got these things that I can pick up on the shelf, and inside of there, maybe it's super messy. Doesn't matter because it's in a basket. It's pretty, like I can grab the thing. But ideally it'd be like one that has everything together for the next step. So sort of the combination of can throw everything in there, you have your basket and you're ready to go, and also pull it down, it's ready for you whenever you're ready for it. I have this sort of concept, main quests, side quests. Can you set it up kind of like a video game? So video game, you've got your main quests, and those tell you, you know, step by step, like what is it that you need to do? You've got side quests that are less important, but you're not really feeling up to doing the main quest. That doesn't sound fun today. You go off and do a side quest or you do some skill building. So kind of having those layers. And there's also the concept of like, when you're playing a video game, and you're doing a really challenging fight and you lose, like you don't care. You just keep trying. You're able to just keep going over and over again. So kind of how like framing that in that way of like you're playing with the challenge of trying to do this thing. Um, one of the other things, I have this in kind of the next section, but since we're speeding, um, there's a book, I think it's called Level Up Your Life, and it talks about some of these like video game concepts where it talks about it's like, oh, you in a video game, you build a skill and then you get like something at the end of your quest. Like you work on your sword skill and you get a better sword. So it's like, can you improve your equipment, like things that way? Options for energy levels. That was kind of like if you have a lot of brain, do the one that requires a lot of brain. Can you build stuff ahead of time that you can pick up even when you don't have a lot of brain? Um, and just kind of the general option here of can you give yourself flexibility? Can you make it easy? So the make the change easy, then make the easy change. What can you do to instead of sort of pushing yourself to, especially like ADHD sort of advice, a lot of that there's, at least for me, I've tried a lot of time to force myself to do stuff with discipline and urgency. And there's these things where it's like, oh, make it really painful for yourself to not do it. Can you instead make it easy for yourself to do it? And then staying on track, accountability. So I've got that in here. We've got the idea of unlocking gear. Can you do it in a special location? Can you go somewhere special to do that? We've got the researchers program, obviously, Shia's personal curriculum accountability group. I'm pretty excited about that guy. Study groups, hanging out with people. Something that I really like from software engineering, we do retros every certain cadence. We go through, we talk about what worked, what didn't work, what can we experiment with, what's next. So you can kind of look through your objectives and your plan and see like, are you aligned with that? And then also just kind of thinking about accommodations, like um, the concept of accommodations. You know what? I go on a whole spiel of it, but like the idea is enabling yourself to be able to do a task. So enablement like has this negative connotation a lot of like, oh, enable like why? It's like work enablement, but it's like instead of productivity, how can you make this something that you're capable of doing? So if something is like, if you're really having a hard time starting on something, um, don't blame yourself on it. Be like, okay, why isn't this working? What uh, roadblocks am I running into? How can I possibly change this to make this easier? Am I missing a sub skill? Is there something going on? Like, really, like, trust yourself. And the last thing I want to talk about is persistence over consistency. Um, I believe this, I heard this from ADHD groups initially as continuation over consistency. But thinking about like the benefits that lots of people say about consistency, it's not necessarily that people are doing it literally every day. It's not, you know, like strict goal of I've done it, I've done it, I've done it, I've done it. It's rather that it compounds over time. So the idea is focus on just today, just this one, and the ability to restart after you stopped. Not like I personally am not a big fan of if you love streaks, go for it, but I find that I will consistently do a streak until it breaks and then consistently not do it at all because I ruined the streak. That may be two sets of consistent, but it's much less actual progress than if I inconsistently did it all the time for the whole year. Um, so yeah, it's more important to keep going. This Brandon Sanderson quote from like Oathbringer that I love to tell myself, but it's throughout the entire like first bit is talking about. I'm spoiling this for people, so shut your ears if you haven't read Oathbringer and you don't want to know what this one is. But it's always like, what's the most important step a man can take? And he thinks it's the first step, but then he realizes no, it's the next step, always the next step, Dalinar. So that is what I think I will leave you with. We are only 11:33. I'm actually really, really proud of myself. I think we got through everything. I will be trying to make that spreadsheet that I was talking about, that I was planning on doing, and I will share that in Accepted. And yeah, if there's any other questions or anything for me, go ahead and message me. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.